Hello and welcome to the Curious Mind podcast. My name is Gabriel Ellis. I'm a psychologist, psychotherapist, PhD scholar of Buddhism, and I'm generally interested in deep psychological issues, topics to dive into, to describe a bit of my psychotherapeutic practice, and to introduce you to a wide range of topics that concern the depth of our mind, the spirit, its development, and some obstacles that we come to across the way. I started a series last time of 3 approaches to life, and last time I described the virtue or value-oriented approach to life. To summarize, the important things to remember about the virtue approach is that it's supposed to make people more independent from the outside world, not only from the external outside world, but also independent from the, as I call it, the internal outside world, which means to be more independent from my own feelings, from my moods, from my habits, and so forth. Very briefly, the difficulty in the virtue-oriented approach is the implementation. If I don't do it properly, then it will result in more neurotic kind of consequences in terms of self-control issues or a sense of inner emptiness. Generally, a virtue-oriented approach is rather rare in today's world. You can find it more commonly in people who are religious, spiritual, or philosophically minded. In contrast to the virtue that was basically in the center of philosophy and religious life in antique Greek and Roman philosophy, but also in medieval world and its orientation towards Christianity. In contrast to that, I would like to describe today the approach to life of the needs-oriented person. I think that this is very much widespread today. Why? Because a need orientation promises to make people satisfied and happy. And I think that this is a model that most people would like to subscribe to. Often enough, they run into issues that I will cover towards the end of my presentation today. And when it's more problematic, it leads to the third approach, which is the self-avoidant approach, which I will describe next time. So the needs-oriented approach is very widespread, and that leads to the question, first of all, of the basics: what are needs? And in my perspective, in my definition, needs are reference points, and evaluation standards of the unconscious. And when they are fulfilled, the unconscious provides us and gratifies us with good feelings. So to put it in more actual psychological terms, when the conscious ego satisfies the needs of the unconscious, and needs are always needs of the unconscious, then the unconscious rewards us with feelings that we as conscious egos enjoy. Feelings of happiness, of joy, and of satisfaction. So needs belong in the realm of the unconscious. They cannot be directly altered or changed. And we as conscious egos, we depend on either knowing them explicitly, those needs of the unconscious, or to intuit them more on a gut level and to follow them without being able to describe how and what we are actually doing. What is first of all important to understand is that needs exist on a spectrum. On the one end of the spectrum, we have the highly abstract source needs, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have much more differentiated needs of everyday life. Those source needs are the most important fundamental needs that drive us and that all humans, all people have in common. In fact, two of them belong also to the animal realm. The first ones, the first need is the need for love or recognition. The second source need is the need for power and influence. And the third one is the need for insight or truth. So this is on the most abstract level. We usually don't encounter those needs popping up in daily life. It's more important to know them and to deal with them on the path of self-development, therapy, or understanding the path that we are on. One step below the highest abstract level of source needs is the second differentiation. And to give you some examples of how, for example, the source need of love differentiates, it differentiates into the needs for recognition, respect, and appreciation, belonging, friendship, family, interaction in general, love, and desire for other people, for connection. The source need of power and influence differentiates into the need for power over the outside world, which means circumstances outside, other people, and the need for influence over the inside world to be able to change my path, my feelings, my thoughts, my energy, my actions, my communications. And there are also needs for self-realization and self-efficacy. And these I would generally count also as differentiated versions of the need for power and control. Then we have the need for insight or truth. And this might differentiate into the needs for knowledge, learning, development, self-development, spirituality, and to generally deal with concepts of metaphysical truths. And apart from that, apart from these very fundamental source needs, there are some that are a combination of these and that are not that easy or simple to categorize. And these are needs for safety, for example, protection, health, beauty, aesthetics in art, aesthetics in my own body, clothing, appearance, the needs for freedom, the need for lightness in life. So now we have the most abstract level of the source needs and the second level of differentiation that I just described. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the most differentiated level of everyday life. This is when we wake up in the morning and we have the need to get to the kitchen, have a cup of coffee, dress in a certain way, still feel tired, wanting to rest, going to work, being tired of the feedback of the bosses, and so on. So this is the everyday level in which we encounter our needs in direct in exchange with the outside world. What is interesting is that usually in everyday life, if people are not psychological or philosophical, they have no idea at which level of differentiation they are interacting with the outside or inside world. And they just try to manage it. They try to fulfill the need on whatever level it appears. And they don't know this hierarchical structure. Now, when we deal with needs and when we deal with this need orientation, we run into three fundamental possible problems. The one problem is fulfillability. The second problem is, does happiness occur when I fulfill my need? And the third one is possible negative consequences of my actions. To give you an example, let's say in an everyday, very mundane level, I go about my day, I work, and in the evening I want to go out with friends and have some drinks. So this is the very normal everyday level of differentiated needs. Now, the possible problem of fulfillability is that if I am dependent on the evening with my friends to go well in order to be satisfied with my day, with my evening, then it first of all depends on the fulfillability of those conditions, which means that if I'm somehow hindered in going out, or my friends cannot go out, or the bar that we go to is surprisingly closed or full, or the weather is bad and it doesn't allow us to drive, whatever it is, or the designated driver is not coming, there might be all kinds of different problems that interfere with the basic conditions in the outside world of fulfilling this very specific desire, need that I have. So this is fulfillability. If I am dependent on this way of fulfilling my need to go out with my friends and something obstructs that, I will be unhappy in the evening as a needs-oriented person. The second problem that might occur is the happiness in the fulfillment. So let's say there is no problem with going out, with meeting, everything goes as planned. I go out with my friends, I have just as usual 3-4 drinks. I get home, but somehow I'm not really satisfied and happy with how the evening went, whatever it is. I might attribute it to some reason or another. Maybe the conversations were boring or I didn't feel good somehow, but the conditions were met. Everyone came. I went. It should have been fine, but it wasn't. So I met the conditions that I set up, but it was not as rewarding as I planned it to be, as I expected it to be. This is the second possible issue in the needs orientation, which is that the conditions that I set out and that I applied do not yield the result and the benefit, the reward that I wanted. The third one is that even if the conditions are met and I'm satisfied with the satisfying the needs and hence satisfied with the outcome, it might lead to negative consequences. So let's say I'm meeting my friends, it's all fun, we have a great time exactly as I planned it, but because I came home late, 2-3 o'clock, maybe I was drunk, but I had a great time, maybe my partner is not happy with that. Maybe I'm hungover the next day when I wanted to organize something with my kids, maybe I needed to work something, maybe I needed to do something on my own. But because I had this specific fun in the evening that was very satisfying back then, it obstructs me in the satisfaction of satisfying my needs in the morning. So it might be that this satisfaction of needs, of specific needs, lead to negative consequences that obstruct other satisfactions afterwards. These are the three main issues that I can, well, obstructions that I can run into when I am needs oriented. Now, when we come to talk about those needs, how is it actually that those needs exist at all, that we know them, that we know how to satisfy them? It might sound like a banal question to us adults, but it must have had developed somehow, right, as kids. So here are two things important to keep in mind. One, when we grow up as kids, it's the families, our parents usually, who plant the first seeds of identifying needs and how to satisfy them. The baby is crying, the parents interpret it as hunger. This is the need. And then they follow the consequences of this interpretation, which is, oh, if the kid is hungry, let us feed it. Milk, whatever it is, puree, and so on. So the parents project a need onto the kid, and then they follow it up with the supposed satisfaction of that need. The kid, the baby in this example, yet doesn't know what exactly the need is and what it wants, how it wants it to be satisfied. We can say that the body has a certain intelligence there, but the psyche, the mind of the baby is not yet so developed that it would have differentiated understanding or knowledge of these needs. So kids, we all grew up with having needs and the satisfaction projected on us by our parents. And then the older we get, the more, and this is the second level, the more it leaves the family life and it moves on to peers, friends, other authorities, or more general, to the society. So beyond our first caretakers, it's society that tells us what needs we have and how to satisfy them. And the grossest kind of exemplification of this is our product and capitalist oriented society that tries to connect source needs for love and power with the product, right? So we have sports companies like Nike, for example, and it would say, look, we all have, you, consumer, have this need for freedom, and we tell you exactly how to satisfy this need for freedom, which is with our running shoes. Or, as you can see some ads for sodas, for Coca-Cola, Fanta, Pepsi, whatever, it always shows those nice, beautiful, happy young people, which of course suggests and insinuates that our need for companionship, for friendship, easy time, connection, love, and so on might be satisfied with their soda for whatever reason. And of course, there are many gray areas in that as well. Society generally provides us with many tools to satisfy our needs, be it culture, be it music, be it clothes, food items, whatever it is. Our culture is partly based on and built on the structured satisfaction of needs that we have, but it also tells us which needs we supposedly need to have. You need to buy this new phone. You need to redo your interior of your apartment every couple of years. These are, of course, the insinuations of society that come into us and are not necessarily ours. Well, neither are the needs that are projected on us by our primary family system. So when we grow older, when we mature, not necessarily, but hopefully, we mature into questioning what we have acquired from our family and from society. And we start to ask ourselves, what is it actually that I want? Leave aside what people tell me that I should want and how I should satisfy those needs. What is it that actually I want? What are the products that I want and need? What are the services that I need? What are the interpersonal needs that I want to have satisfied? And how do I want to go about the satisfaction of these needs? This is maturation, becoming more individual, more differentiated, more independent from the insinuations of our caregivers and of society. And why is that important? It's important because the supposed happiness, joy, and fun that are supposed to come from the satisfaction of needs doesn't come from the satisfaction of the needs of society. It comes from the satisfaction of the needs of the unconscious, of my unconscious. So this is the level inside of me that I address. I have to understand, what is my unconscious? What does it want? How do I satisfy it? How do I go about it? And so on. It becomes a very individual fingerprint, so to speak. I have my own spectrum. I have my own very individuated profile of needs, and I have to find out what that is in order to maximize this approach of needs orientation so that I can become happy and satisfied through the rewards of the unconscious that recognizes that I'm satisfying its needs in the most direct way. Now, if someone is successful in this needs orientation, it comes with certain benefits. The one benefit is, of course, the satisfaction and joy, the good feelings as the reward of the unconscious. If someone is good at it, they're also competent in understanding, and here I'm speaking of the conscious, the ego, that they're competent in understanding what they need and how they want to apply it to realize it. And it comes with certain degrees of freedom. This is the maturity in need satisfaction. that I don't need to satisfy my need right now in exactly one way, but that I'm flexible. I have my degrees of freedom. I can delay the satisfaction of a certain need when it's necessary, and I have flexibility in terms of how I want to apply it. In the interpersonal realm, a needs orientation also has certain very noticeable consequences. Generally, if someone is successfully needs oriented, they are quite approachable and open. They can appear as interesting and caring. Why? Because needs oriented people acknowledge their own needs for closeness, for connection. But because they understand how they are, they equally recognize those needs in the other. So when I talk to someone, yes, I want to fulfill my needs for connection and power and so on. But I understand that the other has the same. And I understand that ideally we both satisfy our social needs in order to have a satisfying, happy, fulfilling interaction, social interaction afterwards. So this is why needs-oriented people usually have a strong emphasis on social needs as well. And they are warm and satisfying to other people because they recognize their needs too. Now, if someone is not fully skilled in this, it might lead to an issue. The issue here is that if I am fully aware of my needs and how I want to satisfy them, I am aware both of my social needs as well as my non-social needs, which is my time alone, my hobbies, reading books, just being peaceful without other people around and so on. Both of them exist side by side inside of me. Now, if I'm just a little bit less skilled, I might be in a situation where I spend a lot of time with other people, and then I recognize the need coming up inside of me, which means my unconscious lets me know that I want to spend time alone. Now, how do I deal with that? Because in a real life situation, I made up this appointment with my friends. We somehow agreed that we would spend the day together. Now, during the day, that need comes up. And I recognize that I don't want to postpone it. I don't want to delay it. I would be dissatisfied afterwards if I did. So here I'm a little bit in the dilemma, because if I fulfill my need to be alone, to read something, to just have quiet, then I will be offensive to my friends. I will frustrate them because I pulled out earlier than we agreed. And if I ignore these needs, then I will be unhappy with myself. I will be frustrated and hollow with myself because I ignored a need, and the consequence of ignoring needs is always some sort of punishment from the unconscious. So this is a particular issue that people who are needs-oriented run into in social situations, because they might appear as selfish, because they're listening to their own non-social needs just as much as to the needs to satisfy social needs and to satisfy other people. And if people do that quite consistently, they might get the reputation that they're selfish, actually, because they don't vibe with the group that much. They more listen to themselves. And along with that, there are other dangers of non-fulfillment generally. If I don't fulfill my needs, there is the danger that I develop anxiety, that I develop depression, disorientation, a low self-confidence, feelings of powerlessness, or just generally suffering from a lack of self-efficacy. Why is that? Because when I systematically ignore the impulses from the unconscious to satisfy my needs, and I act against it for whatever reason, because I'm stressed at work, or I'm convinced to satisfy other people's needs, my partners, my families, my bosses, and so on. So I'm not listening to the unconscious and the impulses to satisfy my unconscious needs. My unconscious will retaliate by weakening the contact, by weakening the connection with my conscious ego. It will stop telling me how to do things and what to do. It will stop telling me what needs I have and how I should ideally satisfy them. And in the process, when I do that more and more and I neglect myself or I neglect my unconscious needs, and the communication between the two of us is suffering, I will become hollow and empty. Why? Because this voice that is supposed to be there, this gut feeling, this intuition, this voice is from the unconscious of what to do, they are not there. And then I will feel at a loss. I want to be happy, but I don't know how. And then what easily happens is, because I cannot listen to my inside, I will look outside and I will ask people, I will ask society, how do you guys do it? I will watch Instagram, photos, documentaries, movies. I will ask the internet forums how to be happy. I will find self-help books, and I'll try to get cues from their lives. But here we're running again into the issue that I described before. Where do we get the first knowledges about needs and the satisfaction? From parents and from society, from the outside world, but it's not mine. So as understandable as it is that if I'm struggling with happiness, with the satisfaction of my own needs, as understandable as it is that I'm looking outside, as clear it is as well that when I'm applying the formula of someone else, it will probably not hit on the head the satisfaction of, it will not be perchance the satisfaction of my unconscious needs. So it will be a hit and miss. Sometimes there will be something satisfying there, but it will be mostly, again, a feeling of emptiness and hollowness inside. And this is something that I often encounter in therapy, be it in the form of depression or be it in the form of anxiety. So there is this big danger of non-fulfillment in this approach of needs orientation. But there is also a problem in fulfillment, a possible problem in fulfillment. The problem here is that it turns into a navel-gazing because, let's say again, I'm a needs-oriented person. I want to keep up the communication of my unconscious with my unconscious. And so I'm always looking to the inside. How do I feel now? What do I want to do now? The situation that I'm in, the conversation that I'm having, the job that I'm in, is it still good for me? Does it still satisfy me? And so I'm becoming very sensitive and vulnerable to the small fluctuations of feelings that I have from the inside. And now the unconscious that I'm dealing with, unfortunately, is not the most mature aspect of the spirit. It's quite regressive, in fact. So it can be childish, it can be aggressive, it can be a little behind, it can be stubborn. So when I enslave myself, when I become anxiously oriented towards the small fluctuations of my feelings, moods, and the communications of the unconscious, it might lead to a dissatisfaction in the sense that I will not be able to finally attune to satisfy everything that comes within. At some point, I'm running in circles. At some point, there will always be some dissatisfaction that I'm just not able to compensate and to fulfill. I'm with people, I will listen to the inside and will say, maybe you will need to step back and spend some time alone. Then I spend some time alone, and that equally feels not fully satisfying because then I'm missing somebody, I feel isolated. So there is this danger in fulfillment in the sense that I will become the slave of the unconscious, and the unconscious, with its random fluctuations, will keep me in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction and frustration. So this is the main problem with the need-oriented approach, that I need to listen to my unconscious in order to be satisfied, but if I listen too much to it, I become enslaved, become anxiously attached to the signals from the unconscious. And on the social level, I will become more withdrawn and isolated, not only because I'm listening mostly to my own needs, but I will perceive the need expression of other people as a crossing of my boundaries. They will suggest, hey, why don't you come over for drinks? Why don't we do that? And then I'm constantly I need to first check myself. Is it good for me? I don't know. Then we have a conversation for 10 minutes. They tell me something, and then I will feel uncomfortable with how the conversation goes. And I'll let them know, look, this is a little bit too much for me now. It's all very needs oriented, but it becomes difficult and awkward in the interaction, in the social interaction, because there's too little space for the needs of the other person. Okay, so this is what I tried to describe today: the approach to life in needs orientation. The promise of fulfillment is joy and satisfaction. The possible problem is that it becomes neurotic, that I will be anxious not to be able to satisfy my needs, or I constantly run into conflicts of needs that cannot be simultaneously satisfied. And then I end up suppressing certain needs in the favor of others to prioritize my career and hence to neglect my social field, so that maybe I will become successful at work but isolated. That makes me unhappy. And because I cut off this topic altogether from the unconscious, it leaves me at a loss of how to satisfy it again, how to approach people. These are the problems that I run into. Like I said in the beginning, most people, I think, would see themselves as need-oriented, but in the application of it, many of them, for sure the ones that I work with in the therapeutic context, many of them have slipped from a needs orientation into a self-neglect, as a self-avoidance. And this is the third approach that I will come to discuss next time. Thank you for your attention.